Good day, everybody, wherever you are in the world. Um, we're very proud and delighted to have Shelli come and join us today. In a moment, she will share some ideas. But to start with, I'm Dr. Pauline Crawford, and I'm the president of the Rotary Club of Global Impact. And what this means, to give Shelli some guidance, was that we have members across the world. So we have members as far away as Malaysia, India. I'm the farthest west, I think, if you're sitting from North Carolina. So the club was set up in North Carolina because Marty had the inspiration to set up a club that wasn't local, and it was actually a club that connected people across the world. And I was drawn into this because I'm always felt a very global citizen. And that's really what I love about coming into the world and meeting people in other places. So I come from England originally, and I lived for 4 years in Malaysia, and I've traveled to many places in the world. And now I live in Nevada. My entry to America was because I met my husband, Dr. Jim, in Budapest. You can't get more global than that. That's another story. But we are very proud of having a club of global impact. And we are new, relatively new. The club was formed, remind me, Marty, it was April of 21.
Sorry about that. April 7th, 2022.
2022. That's right. We're 2023, aren't we? I've got my years muddled up.
April
But
7th.
it feels like we've been here forever. And because of Marty's inspiration, we are a very female-driven organization. Oops, sorry, I just need to turn the telephone off. We have 60% of our members are female. And in fact, this is very appropriate because, Shelli, you're a female in a quite male sector. But one of the reasons, apart from getting to know Marty, that I joined was because in the last year before I started, there was a Rotary International president who was a woman, Jennifer Jones, and she was the first woman in 117 years. Yeah, so Rotary, and my experience of Rotary when I was in England many decades ago, friends who were in Rotary, it was very male and very traditional, and I wasn't drawn to it. In the 90s, the first female presidents of local clubs came into being, so only in the 90s. So we're talking about a large organization. So when Jennifer Jones came in, it was quite a remarkable feat. Now, this year we have a male president at the top of Rotary, but the year after that, we have another woman. So there is definitely a very good focus on diversity and equality. And I think that is very appropriate. Now, we have various announcements what we will make towards the end, because we've just voted for our president for the year after Patty is president. And we're very ahead of the game because many clubs are not as advanced as us. And I would say that's very much down to Marty. Marty is an amazing driving force within this organization. So thank you, Marty. And for me, my passion is the power of authentic harmony and the light of the lighthouse shining across the world and hopefully into space, which we're going to hear more about. And so maybe I will call on Patty just to give us a little view of the four-way test and explain to Shelli what the four-way test means and why Rotary has this.
Thank you. You know me inside out. I'm telling you, the four-way test, I take it with me wherever I go, whether it's at home, work. Is it the truth? Is it fair? Does it build friendships and goodwill? And does it benefit all concerned? Yes, 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 I'm in. And that's what Rotary it's the foundation, and of course there's the pillars of missions that, they focus on. However, that's the foundation. It needs to say yes to all those questions. And that's how we roll. And again, welcome.
Thank you, Patty. And the I'm also bearing here a pin, which is a Paul Harris pin, and this is Paul Harris was the founder members of Rotary. So Rotary is about service across the world, and maybe as a great fan of Star Trek, I would take this into space. So I would like to get the ball rolling, so to speak, and invite our speaker to share with us for the next 20 minutes or so. And I know, Shelli, you would like us to really get engaged in conversation and ask lots of questions. So I hope all of you are ready with your questions. And Shelli, you have a very amazing I'm going to say your history is amazing and long, and we have posted that out. So I'm just going to leave us to find out more by hearing your words. So I would like to hand over to you, Shelli, and intrigue us about space. Are we going to Mars or Venus?
Well, we are already going to Venus. There's already probes going there, and we have been to Mars, just not as human beings yet. So that answers that. Well, thank you again so much. I'm so honored to be joining you. As you said, I'm Shelli Brunswick, and what we're going to talk about is space and how space is actually part of our daily lives. And I'll share a little bit about my background so you know a little bit more about me. I always like to say my journey has 3 big chapters. And that first chapter is when I enlisted in the US Air Force right out of high school. For me, when I graduated high school, I really didn't have college money. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I wanted to see the world. And in the 1980s, the best way to do that was to join the military. So I was fortunate to join the military as an enlisted airman. They made me a personnel specialist, which is like human relations. So I learned a skill. I earned the GI Bill, so I earned college money after I separated from the military to go to school. And I got stationed in Turkey and Germany, so I got to see the world. And it was wonderful because I believe in what you're saying about the Rotary Club. You know, it's about having that global perspective. And I was able to experience that, as a young airman living abroad in the 80s, which was a unique experience. During this time, though, I was able to go to school at night and on the weekends. And so I was able to complete my bachelor's and master's degrees going to school at night. And that allowed me to apply to become an officer in the Air Force. And when I was accepted to become an officer in the Air Force, they made me a space program manager. So program manager, procurement officer, acquisition, there's a number of titles for it. But ultimately, it led me into the space industry. And as an officer, I got to do many assignments doing that space career, getting stationed at the Space Systems Command in Los Angeles, doing, ground station, launch vehicles, satellites. I also got to get stationed teaching at Defense Acquisition University as a professor, teaching about space acquisition. I also worked at a defense contract management agency where I got to work in the facility of Northrop Grumman Space Park. So I got to see how, great companies like Northrop Grumman and others do business and do space business and create those future launch vehicles and satellites. And at the time, Northrop Grumman, they've been working on the James Webb Space Telescope, which, as we know, has launched. And so that's an amazing thing that's taken place. And then one of my last assignments in the Air Force was working on Capitol Hill, where I helped to secure the budget for the Air Force. So that was an amazing job and opportunity. I loved working with all those amazing members of Congress and congressional staffers who all care deeply about the United States and our allies, and they all want to do the best they can to support our nation. So it was a wonderful place to work. At that time, I realized I was ready to retire and start the 3rd chapter of my journey. And that was a fortunate time. The Space Foundation was also looking for their chief operating officer. And I applied. And after a 4-month interview process, I was selected to become the next chief operating officer at Space Foundation. And I've been here 9 years. And it's been an amazing journey over the last 9 years. So the Space Foundation is a U.S. nonprofit. We do business internationally, and we really look at that entire workforce pipeline. So we look at kindergarten through 12th grade education. We have a leadership academy that's primary school, middle school, high school. And then we also do teacher professional development, because if we can help teachers bring space into the classroom, then we can reach many children that can become excited about space and space careers. We also do entrepreneurial facilitation. And then one of our premier events is our annual space symposium that takes place every year in Colorado Springs. That's for the space industry, where the space industry of academia, military, commercial, civil, and international come together to talk about the future of the space industry. So this is an amazing place to be. And this is my third chapter. I'm not sure what the fourth chapter will be, but time will tell. And Dr. Pauline and I, we have plans to work on some projects together. So we'll see how that goes. What I'd like to do is bring up some slides and kind of share with you a little bit about the space industry, because many times people have some perceptions about space. They may think, well, space is not for me. That's for those astronauts and rocket scientists. And so I think what helps is to really kind of talk about what is space and how it's part of our everyday lives. So I can see my slides, and I hope you can see them as well. And I can still see you. You all look beautiful. So we're going to talk a little bit about space, how it's part of our everyday lives, and that space is actually for everyone. Now, as we look at 2023 and how we're rounding out the year, you talked about, are we going to Venus? Well, we certainly are. There are some probes going to Venus, but I do have on the slide that the European Space Agency has sent a probe to Jupiter. We also are getting those great images and information from the James Webb Space Telescope. NASA has talked about the returning humans and the first crew back to the moon. NASA is also awarding commercial space contracts for commercial space station contracts, because we know the International Space Station will be decommissioned in 2030. But we're also seeing this amazing upswelling in commercialization, where private citizens can now go to space. And right now they're doing a lot of space tourism with rockets, but we are seeing the potential for private citizens going to the moon with SpaceX. So there's a lot of excitement going on in space. So that probably has you thinking, well, space is about the moon and it's about Mars and it's about all this other stuff. But I really want to wrap it back to how space is part of Earth and what we do here on Earth. So in 2022, the global space economy was $546 billion. And the most exciting part of that is 78% of it was commercial, which means it's products and services that we use every day. And some of those look like what we're talking on now. We're using Zoom to communicate. And Zoom is a great form of space technology, not Zoom itself, but actually telecommunications. The entire telecommunications was created by the space industry. So think about how COVID would have been different had we not had telecommunications. Think about the pandemic of 1918, so we were able to have telehealth, telecommunications, telework, teleschool. We're able to do all these wonderful webinars like today and interviews, all thanks to space technology. Another one of my favorite forms of technology is, capturing those images. We took a selfie before we started our talk today, and many of your phones are using NASA imaging technology to capture those photos, as well as about several other types of space technology. You have GPS in there, you have algorithms. So you're using a lot of space technology on your cell phones. And then I would be remiss if I didn't highlight my favorite Apollo era space technology, which is fire retardant clothing, because my husband was a firefighter for 30 years. And thanks to space technology, he was able to come home every night. There's many other applications, but we'll talk about how space is part of sustainability. As the Rotary Club, you're looking at that global reach and how are we all achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, and we're focusing on global challenges. And what I want to highlight is that space is part of achieving those 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Now, those goals were all agreed to by the UN members, and our goal is to accomplish them by 2030. We are a bit behind, but hopefully we can all make it up together. So if you're interested in knowing how space is helping each of those Sustainable Development Goals, you can go to the UNUSA, the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs website, and they have a drop-down menu that highlights the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and how space is helping to solve each and every one of those. Now, at Space Foundation, we're very passionate about a number of those. We look at gender equality, underrepresented groups that are not part of the space industry, quality education, partnership for the goals, innovation, and more. So we're very passionate about those goals. And what I'll do is I'll talk about a couple of the sustainable development goals and how space is specifically helping those. So when we think about food security, one of the amazing areas is on the far left, you see three young women who I met were going to Qatar University. They were studying to be nutritionists. Now, you would not normally think of nutritionist as being part of the space industry. And what they wanted to do was create a healthy, delicious snack that would also help to reduce food waste. Because many times fruits and vegetables that don't look perfect or just right are thrown away and normally left to rot. What they were able to do was take those fruits and vegetables, which are totally fine, just not aesthetically perfect, use a good old-fashioned form of space technology, freeze-dried technology from the Apollo era, partnered with NASA, and create a healthy, delicious snack that helps to now reduce food insecurity in the Middle East. So again, not normally traditional people you would think about in the space industry using a tried and true form of space technology. And again, there's other examples on the slide, but we'll get to Q&A more. We talk about gender equality and quality education. Now, Space Foundation, as I shared, we have some amazing programs, and we do those programs around the world. We partner with organizations around the world to deliver those programs. But on this slide, I did want to highlight my good friend, Busute Gerdo Bolo, who is from Botswana, and she is sharing. I am making sure, yes, Botswana. She also did work in Zimbabwe. So just making sure I get all the places that she's done a lot of her work. But one of her activities is creating a program for women and girls to be empowered and to learn fourth industrial revolution activities, educational system 5.0, 21st century skills, because she believes, by bringing everyone to the table, women and girls, we're better able to help solve poverty, hunger, climate change, and more, that her support of this is a wonderful endeavor. And so this is one of her programs to create an education program. I also highlight the importance of clean water and sanitation. And on this slide, I'm highlighting another friend, Lumbi Malambo. Now, Lumbi grew up in Africa, and she would have to walk to retrieve water for her family. And women and girls today are still having to walk 4 to 10 miles one way to retrieve water for their families. And because of this, they may not be able to go to school or get jobs. Also, they could retrieve this water and it could be harmful to them and their families and their animals. The other challenge is I just had a good friend return from Kenya, and he shared because of climate change, many of the rivers have now dried up. So these women and girls are having to walk and potentially dig in the riverbeds to retrieve water. So what Lumbi has done is started a nonprofit that helps to drill boreholes, wells, 30 minutes, a 30-minute walk from a village. This now means women and girls can walk 30 minutes one way, retrieve the water for their families. It's safe, and now they can go to school and get jobs. So by looking at one sustainable development goal, it can impact several more, and many of them are interconnected. Now, what I will highlight is we have been operating in space and living in space as human beings for more than 20 years. That means every drop of water on the International Space Station has to be recycled and reused. And so NASA has created some great space technology on filtration of the water so it's reusable, as well as testing to ensure that it's safe to drink. And that technology has been commercialized. So here in America, you could go to a sporting goods store, purchase a thermos, a bottle that you could actually go somewhere camping and scoop water out of a river or a puddle, and it gets filtered with that amazing space technology, and it's now safe to drink. So now you don't have to hike in with your water or carry plastic bottles around, which could get thrown away in the pristine areas of hiking. You hike in and you hike out with what you have. And the testing that NASA has done on the International Space Station to test the water is also used here on Earth. It can be used to test wells if there's a hurricane and you get water that flows into the well or rivers that overflow, then the well can get contaminated. So it's really important to be able to test that water, ensure it's safe for human consumption. So again, highlighting an amazing role model like Lumbi Malambo, who's trying to make a difference, as well as how space technology is helping to impact this one sustainable development goal. And of course, another sustainable development goal we think about is energy. We realize a lot of our climate change is being caused by our need for affordable and clean energy. And how do we make that transition both for space flight and long duration space flight and colonies on the moon and Mars and beyond, but also here on Earth? So some of that technology we're looking at is improving solar panels. Now, again, solar panels were designed by the space industry for space flight, during the Apollo era, but they've also been used here on Earth. And so what NASA is currently doing is how can they improve them, make them more energy efficient, and make them self-cleaning? Because on Mars, there are dust storms that can last for months, that can cover large regions of the planet, and there's nobody there to go clean them. So what they're creating are solar panels that can vibrate and self-clean, which is wonderful because here on Earth, you know what else? We have big dust storms in areas where there are large solar panels, solar arrays. And so if we can create self-cleaning solar panels, we increase the energy efficiency of those solar panels, which ultimately can decrease our use of fossil fuels. So it's all part of how do we work together to ensure we have affordable clean energy. The other thing I want to highlight is how we're looking at technology and the differences in technology from the Apollo era to the Artemis generation. So in the Apollo era, we were really focused on putting a man on the moon and safely returning him to Earth. We were not thinking about tech transfer, how this technology from space is transferred into commercialization, or how tech insertion, taking technology from Earth and inserting it into space activities. And so that is really part of the technology we're looking at today during the Artemis era. So here are some of your tech trends that you can watch. Many of these you're probably very familiar with. We already just talked about energy and energy storage solutions. We've talked about there's quantum technology, there's artificial intelligence, robotics, advanced manufacturing, communications. So all of these technologies are part of space, as well as they're part of Earth. So now there's great synergy with how we are interconnecting space and technology. So for individuals who really want to focus on biotechnologies and healthcare and applications from space to Earth, there's a whole sector for that. Many of you may not know that we talk about James Webb Space Telescope, but there's the Hubble Space Telescope that came before. And Hubble was designed to look into space for anomalies. And a company took that technology and used it to look into the human body for anomalies. And because of that, we now have mammogram detection. So because of the Hubble Space Telescope, millions of lives have been saved. Nobody thought that would come from Hubble Space Telescope. But again, it's part of that tech transfer of things that are for space can be used for Earth to make a difference. So when we think about the economic sectors that are out there, there is one sector that's called space, and that is your astronauts and rocket scientists. But all these other economic sectors are space economic sectors. Each and every one of them have a space component. Agriculture, we have precision agriculture, we have vertical farming, we use satellites to monitor the health of crops. So that it's all integrated into agriculture. Finance, our entire financial system is running on the backbone of space infrastructure and cybersecurity. As a matter of fact, space is your first form of blockchain. Every time you go to an ATM and take money out, there is a date timestamp that comes from a GPS satellite that validates that that transaction was real. Your first form of blockchain. Who even knew back then? So each and every one of these economic sectors is really intertwined with space. And the area I also want to talk about is workforce, because I started this by saying how space is for all of us. So as you can see, the career fields are amazing, but let's talk about the workforce. So when we think back to that workforce of the Apollo era, we look at the left, the picture on the left, we see that Apollo 11 launch room, and there is one woman in that room in the center. But, when we think about that workforce from the Apollo era, it was 2 countries in a space race, government workers, primarily male, and STEM professionals, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Now, we do know from amazing movies like Hidden Figures that there were fantastic women in diversity that were supporting and actually enabling the Apollo era. Dr. Katherine Johnson, who was the mathematician who, did all the calculations that supported John Glenn's flights. I mean, without these amazing women and men, the Apollo era would not have happened. And we're discovering their amazing stories. But let's compare the Apollo era to the Artemis generation. Here we are, multiple regions of the world now. Now, I said 2 countries were in a space race during Apollo era. Now more than 90 countries are operating in space, and many more want to be part of the space industry. It's multi-generational, and we are seeing gender equality. So I got a good friend, Ruvimbo Samanga. She's a lawyer from Zimbabwe, a space lawyer. And so she is part of that diversity that is coming into the space industry. And I interviewed her and asked her about her challenges coming into the space industry. And she said, absolutely, there were some challenges. She had self-doubt. We all, the imposter syndrome. Is this an industry for me? But she also talked about the social, economic, and technical barriers. So this is something for us to remember as we're looking at bringing more underrepresented groups into the space industry. We need to find ways to break down barriers, extend a hand, and help those individuals come into the space industry, because we need everyone. And this is why we need everyone. In the United States, we have an aging workforce, and we're looking at a shortage in many skills. And this includes the entire workforce pipeline. We saw during COVID how challenged our supply chain was. So we are short. We're going to be short in 2025, 2 million workers in the supply chain, welders, electricians, technicians. So we need jobs from high school graduates to PhDs and everyone in between to realize that space jobs are, yes, astronauts and rocket scientists, but it's also in the manufacturing and supply chain, all the way to these other careers, program managers, policymakers, teachers, technicians, investors, entrepreneurs, artists, and astronauts. So there's now never been a better time to come into the space industry. So your next question is probably like, how do we do that? How do we get people excited? How do we help them come in? So I'm going to run through this workforce development roadmap, or as I call it, an interstellar guide to success. Dr. Pauline, I know you and I will work more on this together. And that is about awareness, access, training, connecting, and mentoring. That first step is people have to be aware that there's even an opportunity. That's why we're all meeting today, to talk about the great opportunities that are part of the space industry. And that's part of what I love about my job, being able to go out and talk about the space industry. Some of the ways Space Foundation partners is by building partnerships with other organizations like African Union, Puerto Rico Space Science Trust, ISESCO, Stardust Festival in Canada, World Space Week. So that is like a great first step, building awareness and partnerships. And I interviewed another good friend, Dr. Chidima, who shared about the importance of bringing that awareness of space into the primary and high schools, especially in Africa. She's from Africa. And if we want to get young Africans to learn about the opportunities in the space industry, we really need to bring it in the form of curriculum. And so that is one of the areas the Space Foundation has. We have curriculum for primary, middle, and high school so that we can help teachers bring that curriculum into the classroom so students understand that space is about careers. Now, that next step is about access. So they're aware they can come into the space industry, but how do we create some real access points? And so at Space Foundation, what we really do is we create partnerships with other organizations, memorandums of understanding, such as with ISESCO, the Islamic World Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, has 54 member countries. And it is a way that the Space Foundation can partner with others, because only through partnership Can we accomplish great things? No one person or one organization can do it alone. No one goes to space alone, and no one can solve the challenges of the workforce pipeline that we are facing today. So we have to work together. Another thing the Space Foundation did in partnership with the White House and NASA was to create the Moon Colony Kit. Now, this was an amazing kit, and it's a physical kit. It's a game that can be mailed to schools and given to teachers or parents. And because it's a game that's a physical game, you don't need internet, so you don't have to worry about getting internet access. And teachers can facilitate the game. So how it works is the kids are on the moon. They're a research colony, and they're doing research, but something has happened. They have a challenge. And now what they do is they draw a card, but the card is one of 50 different cards that's a career in the space industry. And now the kids solve that challenge based on the card they drew in the career field. So maybe it's the marketing person or the technologist or the leader. And now they solve that challenge together. So it's teaching them about all the careers in the space industry, but it's also teaching them 21st century skills, leadership, communication, collaboration. So that's another great thing that we've come up with that creates an access point. And last year, we sent 700 of these games to underrepresented schools around the United States free of charge. So another way to create access points was through an interview I talked with Antonio Stark, and he shared the importance of giving scholarships and awards from amazing organizations like the International Astronautical Congress or Space Generation Advisory Council. Because when you give awards and scholarships to individuals that are in underrepresented communities or emerging space nations, this can make national news. So one, you're giving that one individual an opportunity, an award that could lead to coming to a conference and building their access into the space industry. But again, for emerging space nation, this could make national news and create more awareness about the emerging space industry and how it's benefiting people right here on Earth. That next step is training. So it may be formal or informal, could be on the job, could be fellowships or internships. So there's lots of ways we can do training. Obviously, if you want to be an astronaut or a rocket scientist, you're going to need a formal education, but there could be other opportunities along the way, maybe a high school diploma, and you can go through a program, an internship, maybe through a community college, and then go to work in the manufacturing sector, that supply chain of the space industry. And for this one, I talked to my good friend Verd Cohen Brasile, and she runs an amazing program called Out of the Box. And it's for high school and middle school students that actually create a company. So she does a science accelerator, and it's teaching them those skills of entrepreneurship and innovation. And she partners with NASA as well as other organizations. So she's out of Israel, but she is partnering with Italy, and she's looking for partners in the United States to create that cross-cultural collaboration as well. So lots of great partnerships and that interconnection around the world. That next step leads right into it, connections and networking. You know, I talked about some great ways you can join the space industry. One is if you're a young space professional, early career, there's Space Generation Advisory Council. The Space Foundation has our Space Foundation International Teacher Liaison Program. So teachers can apply to become members of this, and then this gives them an opportunity to network with other like-minded, amazing teachers around the world. It also gives them access to our annual space symposium that takes place every year. We do a special teacher liaison track at that event, and they get to go to all the unclassified sessions and the exhibit hall to learn about what's happening in the space industry. There's also Women Tech Network, Women in Aerospace, TODAIR, United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs, and ENUSA has a number of programs. They have Space Lawyers, Space for Youth, Space for Women, Space and Water. So lots of amazing opportunities for like-minded individuals to partner through ENUSA. And again, I'll go back to my good friend Ruvimbo Samanga, who highlighted the importance of building those networks. You know, sometimes we get a little nervous. We all want to stay behind our desk because we think we're just going to sit typing away at our desk. But it is important to build those networks because, as Ruvimbo highlighted, that finding those like-minded individuals helped her on her journey and find her way and find like-minded individuals to support her career path. So that last step, which many times can be our first step, could be mentoring. And there are a lot of great mentoring programs. When you find a mentor, they can help you overcome a number of your challenges. So some of those mentorings are Space Generation Advisory Council, the UNUSA Space for Women program, and Women Tech Network. Now, I will highlight, just because it says Space for Women and Women Tech Network, they are open to men and women. So they need men and women to be mentors and proteges. So these are amazing programs. And I'll kind of wrap this up with my good friend Sejo Budhalia. She is amazing young professional. And not only is she a genius with multiple patents, but she has also been a mentor and a role model through ANUSA. And she has started her own nonprofit to help underrepresented kids learn more about the space industry. So she's already giving back and being a mentor. And she did a study on mentoring and presented her paper at the International Astronautical Congress in 2023. And this is her giving her presentation highlighting the value of how mentoring plays for women in underrepresented groups. So what I'm going to do now, I could go on and on with beautiful slides, but I'll bring this down so we can see if there's any questions you'd like to ask, or any other conversation talking points.
Fantastic. I just want to say, Shelli, that was so inspirational, and I didn't realize there were so many aspects of space that impact our world, and that was absolutely stunning. So our first question is from Ritu.
Yes, Shelli, what a wonderful presentation. I am so impressed with the SDG goals, how everything kind of ties into this space technologies. I talk about SDGs so much. I did not had any idea how well integrated space technology and what we envision on Earth and work on Earth are tied in together. Being a cybersecurity professional myself, I could tie into a lot of technologies, but you have done such a wonderful job, just like bringing our awareness to what lies beyond the Earth's atmosphere.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. And Marty, you have a question.
Yeah. Thank you so much again, Shelli. And I had a comment and then a question. The comment was, we used to live in Houston. We worked there for a billionaire family, the Friedkins, and our son was homeschooled. So we went over to NASA one day for homeschool days, and I was very shocked to see that when we pulled up, homeschool days was 3 days long, because there were that many thousands and thousands of children, over 10,000 children. NASA could not accommodate them all in one homeschool day. Okay, so that was the first shocking thing at NASA that day. It was a distinct privilege to be there in Houston. Unbelievable. But then my question is, that was my comment, but now moving into my question is, one of the tour guides mentioned the computational power of the original mission, into outer space, was equivalent to that of a calculator, a handheld calculator that humans have today. Now, it was cathode tubes and diodes and anodes in a steel panel with metal flip switches that made a noise when you switch the switch. But he said that you have to understand to go into outer space. Shelli, could you comment on your knowledge of how far we've come and that original computational algorithmic power?
So what I'm going to share is, no, I cannot comment on that. I think that's amazing. I will share with the technology slides that obviously computation power has grown exponentially with semiconductors along the process. And so there is a lot of technology advancements. But what I do want to highlight is how technology is driving things, and the importance of how technology is creating new opportunities for innovators, entrepreneurs, investors, right? It's creating this whole new market segment, and how that technology is going to make things better here on Earth for all of us. So that is where I'd really like to focus, is focusing on how that space innovation is really helping us, as we said, Ritu said, solving our greatest challenges here on Earth.
That's fantastic. We have a hand up from Alf. Alf D.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Hi, Dr. Crawford. This is Alf. We've met before. You've done some presentations, which I've attended. Martin also knows me. Thank you very much, Dr. Shelli. I'm actually a space engineer. Sorry. Let me put my video on so that you can see me, I think.
Oh, hello.
Hi, I am actually a space engineer. I work in the space industry, and so I know a lot of what you're talking about. But thanks for your enthusiasm and the way you share it. Again, the communication needs to get out there because people think space and they think you got to be a rocket scientist, you got to be an astronaut, when there's everything from cleaning to secretaries to law to there's money, financials, there's everything, and it's cat and its dog in between, including obviously the first beings that were sent to space were animals. So there's everything. Maybe you wouldn't send your cat today, but or your dog, but okay. But in saying that, I totally completely agree with you in terms of communication. I actually run a communication course for children, late children from like 7, 8, 9 to their late teens, called Space Engineering Communication, and I base it on Apollo 13 in terms of how we put the square plug into the round hole and stuff like that in order to save the astronauts. And I have a practical which I do with them. I also do the international language using the NATO alphabet, the alpha, because we all speak different languages. So an A and an E, depending whether you speak Spanish, German, French, or it all becomes different. We can't assume that everybody understands what you're saying. And I've done it in Spain, I've done it in Ireland, I've done it in the UK, I've done it in China, I've done it in Ghana. So I go across the board. And in terms of transfer of space knowledge to human resources, for instance, we at EUMETSAT, we send data, we bring guys from Africa and train them in things like, for instance, we set up data centers out there. One of our satellites does download something like 3.2 terabytes of data a day.
Thank you. Do you have a question for Shelli, Alf?
I actually just wanted to share that we actually have a women in aerospace meet on the 23rd of November in Germany at EUMETSAT, where you'll have a tour of the place. So if you're in the vicinity, I can send the Eventbrite link. But thank you very much for bringing that to the fore. The other thing I think you missed was, in all your lots of things doing, was miniaturization. Because miniaturization was something that was keyed and geared towards space, because lifting off was, I think, back in the day when I was working on the International Space Station, we were talking about $10,000 per kilo of excess baggage. Thank you very much.
You are absolutely correct. And I do have miniaturization on the slide for technology, because it's not just for lifting, but, airlines, anything like that, miniaturization. You can also look at, think about like you said, your phones, how big they can be. But now, some people I've even seen are getting rings that are now your phones, right? So you got your Fitbits, you got rings. So we're miniaturizing everything, but it does help with not only that, but for space. And the miniaturization can also help, because one of the things they're doing is taking healthcare technology and putting it in clothing. So instead of having to think about being monitored, you can actually have like a clothing that's monitoring if you're having any anomalies. So there are new ways they're looking at taking healthcare applications, intertwining it with clothing, similar to what we do for astronauts, but you need to miniaturize many of those things to make it comfortable that somebody could wear. So there's a lot of miniaturization happening, and so it's a great thing. So thank you for highlighting that. It is an important area to discuss, especially as we look to go on to from Moon to Mars. What can we take and what can we make there with 3D printing and all those types of technologies, because we can't take everything with us to the Moon and Mars. We're going to have to be able to make it with the resources that are available. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Dr. Mike, you had your hand up. Do you have a question for Shelli?
I do. Hi, Shelli. We've been on our professional network for some years now. I've watched you kind of take off on cyber. My question to you is, I attended a briefing from CSIS where Space Force was there, the Commander Space Force. How do you see the future in, everybody has the ability to launch their own satellite, but who do you see as the leader of, let's say, overseeing the satellites that are up and above now in the future to come?
Well, that's a really good question, and really a challenging one, because you're talking about treaties and laws. And, right now, each nation is responsible for their launch vehicles, right? And what they put up. And so that becomes very challenging. And UNUSA, the UN and the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs and UN UCOPUS, outer space, uses for outer space, are looking at how do we come together to talk about some of the technology that's advanced since those treaties were written more than 50 years ago. So we haven't had a lot of treaties or agreements that have kept up with the space pace, right? And I think we can all agree the world is a very challenging place right now to try to get more treaties signed. So what NASA's trying to do is to do the Artemis Accords and to get countries to kind of agree to the rules of the road. How will we operate in space? How will we work together? Now, the Artemis Accords are like a guideline. They're not legislative. Nobody has to vote on them, but they are a way of countries to sign on and say, we agree that we'll kind of want to follow these Artemis Accords. And there was just another signatory this past week. So I think we're over 30 now that have signed on to the Artemis Accords. So that's one of the things that's going to be a challenge, is real legislation, and more, can we come together on guidelines for how we'll work together, not only with launch vehicles, but slots for satellites. You may not believe it, but space is getting full, which seems crazy, but there's, low Earth orbit only has so much space. And so how many satellites are going into those positions? So we're looking at who has access to those positions in space. And then as we look at going on, what does a space station look like on the moon? And what if there are two space stations and one's Russian and one's American maybe? And what if one of them starts to fail? Can the individuals from the one space station go to the other space station? So there's all kinds of laws. And what happens when two citizens in space maybe want to get married or have a baby or property? And so I share with you, this is not my area of expertise, but there are some great thinkers that are space lawyers. I also have a space medicine friend. She's like the mother of space medicine, because it's not space medicine. People think, well, space medicine is one discipline, but think of all the disciplines that are here on planet Earth, all the type of doctors we have, all the specialists we have. Well, we're going to need the same thing living on the moon or Mars or the International Space Station, because each of those environments and gravity have different effects on the human body. And we know space is a very challenging environment for the human body. I mean, I won't go into that today, but we know, like for women, we already get osteoporosis, but because of living in space without the effects of gravity pulling on our bones and making them stronger, we develop osteoporosis even faster. Men have eye problems and other challenges. Your circulatory system can get challenged because, again, we were designed for gravity and the gravity we live in. So, so as you think about the careers, and I know you talked about space law, my biggest highlight is there are lots of opportunities, and it is really a new frontier for careers and career opportunities in areas we have not even thought about that are going to be unlocked. And can't even get into AI or quantum today, but think about those technologies and how those will benefit from space. You know, quantum needs a cold environment to be efficient. Guess where there's a really cold environment? Space. So there's a lot of
So
things that
true.
space is a good place. So I've gone off a bit on a tangent, and I know we're kind of running out of time. So I know, Marty, you've got a question. I hope, Dr. Mike, I got to a good answer for you there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. A very quick question there, Marty.
Yeah, I was just going to follow up on Alf. I was scratching my head one day wondering why this man in Germany is part of an Africa group, because it doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever, and he's pretty far off to really contribute. And then he explained to me that he's reviewing the satellite imagery every day, and that this is helping to determine rainfall patterns, growth, cultivation, agriculture, and by doing this every hour and minute of satellite scans of every section of Africa, that they're able to now predict and study and tell people this is what you need to reap, this is where you need to plant, wait, hold it. And I was like, wow, this is unbelievable, just amazing. This is the benefits of space, and from a guy in Germany.
And I'll just highlight as our closing talking point, there's a great program, and it was on one of the slides, but I didn't talk about it, was the NASA Harvest Program. And that is where NASA, it's administered through the University of Maryland from Dr. Catherine Nakalibi, who's from Africa. And it's about taking space science and helping farmers increase crop yields around the world. But she specifically has helped farmers in Africa. And for that, she won the 2020 African Food Prize laureate for that work. So again, another great program to help farmers use space technology, the NASA Harvest Program. So again, I know we're closing in. So Dr. Pauline, I'll turn it over to you for your closing comments that I know you had a few things to share with people.
Oh, we do. I know, Aaron, you've got your hand up. Can you type your question in the chat, or say it very, very quickly, because
I just had a quick question for Shelli. As far as the treaties go, do you think that would be paramount on getting all the space junk cleaned up?
Well, space junk is a totally fun topic. Think about this. It's a great entrepreneurial challenge. What are entrepreneurs good at? Solving problems. What do we have a problem with? Space junk. So Space Force is looking at obviously reducing the amount of space junk they're creating, they and others. But there are some great entrepreneurs that are looking at how could they capture that space junk. One company in Japan is looking at maybe, can you capture it? Another company here in the US is looking at, can you repurpose that space junk? Can you capture it and then recycle it? You know, reuse that metal and all those alloys and do advanced manufacturing in space, reusing space junk. So there are some amazing entrepreneurs that are trying to figure that out. But again, I think the first step, Aaron, is we need to stop polluting. And that seems to be a habit we have as humans. We've done that on Earth. We've done that in low Earth orbit. And now I think we as a humanity need to decide, how do we want to carry out going on to the moon and Mars and beyond, and maybe figuring out how we don't pollute, but reuse, recycle, reduce. So good way to close the topic.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you for answering that. And of course, my passion is that human beings should be able to converse and create together in perfect, authentic harmony. So we need to teach our children about space. And I think one of the things for me that's come out today is how the vastness of space could become a problem area, the same as planet has. But we need to make sure our foundations are so well managed. And I love the fact that women are now becoming more and more part of the space sector, but there's still a huge expansion needed of really valuing women and girls as well as boys into this arena. And I know we could have this conversation forever, but I want to say so much thanks, Shelli. We've recorded this. We'll make sure all our members and the friends of Rotary actually get to see this, because I think a lot of people are not aware of this. There's so much that is I've learned today, which I kind of sense was there, even from our conversations, but I think so many people don't know. It's not common knowledge, and especially with girls, and especially in developing countries, in Africa, Asia, ASEAN, all of those, we need to get the conversation out. And I think it's fantastic. Conversations in space. We're going to take this further. So I want to thank you for your time and your expertise and your talent, Shelli, and for coming and joining us today. We've literally got 5 minutes left. And if you're okay to stay, we just want to make an announcement because we have appointed Ritu Chopra to be our president in 25 to 26. We're very ahead, a bit like space. So I want to congratulate her. I want to also say thank you to Shankar, Aaron, and Brittany, who are all on the call here today. We really appreciate your nominations, and we don't want you to stop nominating yourself when the elections come round the next year. And we want to make sure that we all support Ritu, and the team is amazing. And thank you for that. Another woman in the gate. And last but not least, and Marty, you may have to help me on this, is we were going to draw the 50-50 the 50-50 prize draw. Can you tell me how to do that? We've got 4 minutes.
Yeah, I think what we need to do for that is let people buy a few more tickets because we got a bunch of questions. How do I buy it? There was an incorrect link, and some people felt like, man, I wanted to buy just one for $5, and we did get a couple more sales. Thank you, Shankar. It's only $5 for the 50-50, but yeah, and then I think if we ask Shankar to go into DACDB, he would need to do a piece of paper with each person's name on it. And then if he would work with Mona to show at the next meeting, the members only meeting, a camera showing each slip of paper, Shankar, with each entry, because I think Patty Frudenberg bought 5, so she would get 5 slips of paper. And then I think what you want to do, Shankar, is have Mona grab all of them live on camera at the members only meeting coming up this month, put them in a hat and stir them around, and then have, one of them picked out and show it to the camera so that people can see live on the air that that's the winner. But if we could just have like 2 more weeks, President Crawford.
Yes, I think
a couple people said
idea.
it was they wanted to buy.
I'll get Mona to do that. I'll get her to connect with you and take it forward.
Okay, that's fantastic. And in fact, Shelli, you can buy one as well. But this is the way to give back to the winner and to put more money in the pot so we can help everybody in the world. We just recently voted to donate $200 to the disaster fund that Rotary is gathering together for places in the world which need it. So Rotary is 46,000 clubs worldwide, and we're just one of them, but we're a very important one, of course. But the gathering of all that is very powerful. So we have come to the end of our meeting, and I want to just ask Ritu if you want to say anything in terms of being our president in 25, 26, one sentence.
First of all, thank you and my gratitudes, and really, really heartfelt thanks for everyone who voted and support. And I am looking for ongoing support from everyone to make me successful, and always be there to support our elected members as well as the community at large.
Thank you. And just to remind everybody to save the chat, we have some wonderful comments on there. We also will have this recording. We will post it on our Rotary Club YouTube channel, and I'll send you a copy as well, Shelli. And just to say, this has been a very expansive meeting. I've really enjoyed this. Being a Star Trekkie from many years ago, I loved the one where we had a female taking over from the captain. And in fact, I wrote a book about 6 characters in a spaceship, and I made the captain a woman, but we'll come back to that another time. So thank you.
One last thing, I just wanted to say that Shelli's presentation is making my head spin, and I think there's a lot to do in terms of entrepreneurship. And I just want to see what is the way forward. I don't have a question. I just want a way forward to translating these NASA technologies into many of the challenges connected to what Ritu mentioned about the 17 SDGs. It's a world challenge, but I think there is something in what Shelli said that we can solve the unsolvable. It takes me to a different level of smartness, more than smart technologies and all of that. It is the space technology that we need to do this. So I'll just turn to you at some point, to Marty and Pauline, to see
Yes.
how to take this forward.
Oh, definitely. Well, Shelli and I.
Well, I'm going to share with you, there is a NASA Tech Transfer Office where there are thousands of patents that are waiting to be commercialized. So they're already there. NASA's already discovered them. They need people who want to go to the NASA Tech Transfer Office and apply for this patent. There's even government grants called Small Business Innovative Research Grants available to try to start building out business plans. So I put the link on in the chat box. It's tech for those who may not be able to see that after the recording, technology.nasa.gov/patents. And you can start by looking there. And again, that space technology cuts across everything from agriculture and satellites and healthcare.
That's
Fantastic.
fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And I think that is that's the case. I know Aaron's got his hand up, but we're running out of time now as it's 9:01. It's 9:01 here in Nevada. So I just want to say thank you again. Anybody who wants to stay on, I'll be here for another few minutes. But I want to acknowledge the time and to honor your time, Shelli, because I know you're very busy. But we will all be working on ideas in space and in our head and in the space in our body. And we will take this forward with the motto for my work is that we combine knowledge, experience, and imagination. And imagination, as Einstein said, encompasses the universe and the infinite power that we have. So let's use our imagination and take this forward. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing you around the galaxy.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.